UCLA professor sues the B school for putting him on leave over a racial blowup. And so this, usually you don't hear so much going on from this institution, but lately there's been a lot happening. So UCLA, their name is Anderson Professor Gordon Clean. I believe it's Clean. So he's a longtime professor with UCLA's Anderson School of Management. So he's suing the school, alleging that he was wrongfully suspended by Anderson's Dean Antonio Bernard last year, and that the suspension resulted in a loss of most of his consulting income. So the professor, Gordon Clean, is alleging that the school put him on leave, a well-timed publicity stunt, is what he says, to distract from the school's plummeting MBA rankings and what he calls Anderson's reputation as an inhospitable place for persons of color. And so Clean, who has been teaching at Anderson since 1981, which is an awful long time, is suing for actual damages to his reputation and income, accusing the Dean Bernardo and the university of fraud, oppression, and or malice. So for having engaged in what he terms unlawful conduct. So he's also asking for punitive damages for the sake of example and by way of punishing defendants for their unlawful conduct in an amount to be proven at a trial. So Clean, this is the story he's going to tell, that he found himself the protagonist in a national news story last summer when he responded to a white student who asked him for a no harm final for black students 8 days after George Floyd was murdered in Minneapolis. So in a June 2nd email last year, the unidentified student was asking that low grades not be counted for black students in the classroom due to the unjust murders of Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, and the George Floyd incident. Okay, so Clean, recalling the incident in detail in an op-ed piece or an opt piece that announced his lawsuit, said that he was shocked by this request. And so the email he wrote struck me as deeply patronizing and offensive to the same black students he claimed to care so much about. So the professor dashed off an email response 20 minutes later that would ultimately go viral and lead to headlines, death threats, and his suspension. So are there any students that may be of mixed parentage, such as half black, half Asian, and so on? So this is what he asked Clean in his email. So what do you suggest that I do with respect to them as well, to these other students? So full concession or just half? So that was the questions he posed. Also, do you have any idea if students are from the Minneapolis area? So I assume that they are probably especially devastated as well, but I am thinking that a white student from there might possibly even be more devastated by this, especially because some might think that they're racist even if they are not. These are things that he put out there for these particular students to think about. So he says that he had wrapped up his reply by citing Martin Luther King, his vision of a colorblind world where people are judged solely by the content of their character, and making it clear that I had no intention of threat or of treating any students differently on the basis of skin color. And so I thought this would do it, and we'd move on with the class final. Instead, and just as important, summer break. So he said he was naive, and within hours, students were calling for his head. And so soon after, they circulated a petition demanding him to be fired. And so within a day or two, nearly 20,000 had signed the petition without him knowing anything about it and taking it into account. Um, he didn't even realize that this was happening. It was unfolding. As far as I could tell, the implications of non-colorblind rating, explains Clean. So that's what was happening. So I was attacked for being what he calls a white man and woefully racist. So on June 5th, 3 days after I was first emailed, I was suspended amid a growing online campaign that was launched at him. And so Clean began receiving death threats on his voicemail and his email. And the professor cited one email in particular that his opt piece, the email was dated on June 11th, and it read, "You are a typical bigoted, prejudiced, and racist, dirty, filthy, crooked, arrogant, Jew kike motherfucker." And so, sorry for that language, but that's what was written here in the article. So too bad Hitler and Nazi are not around to give you a much needed Zyklon B shower. Okay, so this is really horrible. So about a week after this whole thing first blew up, there were police officers stationed outside of his house. So it would take UCLA's threat manager, Chris Silva, another 10 days to check in with him to make sure that he was okay. So in Clean telling the story, Anderson's administrators became rattled of all this, but not because of the fact that his life was now being threatened, but the problem was that Anderson's reputation, what it had granted an African American professor tenureship, and it hadn't granted them tenureship in decades. And so that's coming out. And so it had but a handful of tenured Latino professors, and black students made up about 2% of the students' body at the campus. And so the men outnumbered women as well. So these were the things that are also going against UCLA as of now. And so the men had outnumbered the women roughly 2-1, leading many students to call Anderson and Manderson School of Management. The Manderson School of Management, get it? Of management. So, meaning it's very unequal and inclusive, and it's what they had, the makeup of the campus was pretty outdated. And so the professor then goes on to attack current Dean Bernardo. So even though a university administrator had made it clear the university could not take any action against me on the grounds that there was no known cause for taking such the actions, Anderson's dean Antonio Bernard took matters into his own hands. So he apparently reasoned that a well-timed publicity stunt might distract attention away from the school's reputation in an inhospitable place for persons of color, to say nothing of its plummeting rankings in the U.S. News and World Report and Bloomberg's Business Week. And so without any deliberation, I was aware of Bernardo's suspended and banded him from this campus. So then, like a well-choreographed dance, the Anderson administration started attacking his character on social media as well. So as I documented in my legal claim, June the 3rd, one day after I received the first email, the Anderson School's Twitter account sent out a message as well: respect and equality for all the core principles of UCLA's Anderson. So it is deeply disturbing to learn of the email, which we are investigating. So we apologize to students who received it and to all those who have been as upset and offended by it as we are ourselves. So this implied I didn't believe in equality for all. So it goes on to say that when that was exactly what he said, I believed and continue to believe. So Judson Kasky, who oversees the accounting program at Anderson, was tasked with monitoring my outgoing email. So I had been deemed radioactive. So I was confused and hurt, and from the start, my whole point had been that all students, irrespective of skin color, should be treated the same. And now this. After an investigation of the incident by the school, Clean was reinstated less than 3 weeks later, but he says that several of his consultant clients dropped him after the public suspension because he lost clients because of all of the drama. So less than 3 weeks after the whole thing had blew up, he was reinstated. But the story is not over yet. That cost me the lion's share of my annual income, he said. So the students involved in this escapade may have moved on to other causes, but I am not. So I am not sure I ever will. So his lawsuit against Dean Bernardo and the University of California Systems, he explains, was filed in California Supreme Court at LA. So he claims that in the suit, the Anderson School hastily buckled under the pressure of negative publicity and sought permission for the university to impose disciplinary sanctions, including terminating his employment as well. So when the university rebuffed the Anderson School, Bernardo abruptly suspended him from his teaching duties and banned him from the campus and hired others to replace him as well. And so the complaint notes that out of approximately 200 faculty members, only one black professor has tenureship, and the school has not granted tenureship to black professor in over 4 decades. Furthermore, although the school once won one of the elite schools of management in the U.S.'s ranking has plummeted to about 18 under the current administration. And so according to the U.S. News and World Report, even worse, out of 119 schools evaluated, Bloomberg Businessweek ranks the school 53 for learning due to its shortcomings in teaching innovation, problem-solving, strategic thinking. Notably, in his September 17, 2021 message, alumni and students about the Businessweek ratings, Dean Bernardo omitted this fact. And so, according to Clean's lawsuit, Dean Bernardo disparaged him to alumni and the general public based on a private communication between plaintiff and the student who had requested preferential race-based rating policies as well. And so Dean Bernardo even went so far as to publicly disclose the adverse personal action the school had improperly imposed on a plaintiff. So it says the lawsuit singles out Dean Bernardo in other ways as well. So Clean claims that the dean knew or should have known, including for examining his personal file and conferring with UCLA's Discrimination Prevention Office, that Clean had an embellished record of service to all Anderson School students regardless of race in 4 decades of teaching at the Anderson School, and that he had long has opposed all identity-based discrimination, having been devastated by the violent rape and murder of his own family members due to an anti-Jewish persecution in the Eastern Europe decades ago. And so his opened in his opt Clean says that no employee should ever cower in fear his employer's power to silence legitimate points of view, and no society should tolerate government-sponsored autocrats violating constitutional mandates. He also offers a parting thought. This is not just about principle, but it's also about the United States' ability to compete. And so Anderson, like elite business schools across the country, is supposed to be training the next generation of innovators. So the people who will muster the imagination and fortitude to create life-changing technologies and lead groundbreaking multinationals, if we don't maintain our standards, if we're not allowed to push all of our students to do their very best, we will be disarming unilaterally. And so I refuse to do that. And I'm convinced that this recent episode, notwithstanding, that most of my students and the colleagues feel the same way. So they basically fired this professor, and he has a scathing opinion about, how things were left to him. So it seems like there's a lot of drama going on with the UCLA institution now. At first we were looking at USC, but now we got to look at UCLA and also the points that he makes about their plummeting rankings. And, you can't escape the fact that if your school is outdated and has a lot of things that they need to clean up, I mean, that's out there on the table too. So when you uncover one thing, you're going to uncover other things as well. So this professor says he sues the B school for putting him on leave over the racial blow-up. So racial blow-up is going on everywhere, not just in the university institution, but this reckoning, this great reckoning, is not over. Not by a long shot. I mean, it is hitting every area. All of the institutions, all the jobs. It's basically a rude awakening of a lot of things that have been either swept under the rug or they haven't been put on the table for a roundtable discussion and to get all of it out. And all of it isn't out completely yet. There's more to come, I'm afraid. And some things you wouldn't believe, but this is just only the beginning. I believe 2021 and from here on out, this is going to continue where we're going to see a lot revealed from a lot of these institutions, these schools, a lot of things that are being uncovered, a lot of disgruntledness with administrative workers and teachers in all of these schools, things that you never really sat down and asked, how did the teachers feel and how does administration feel and what is really going on in these institutions of academia? What kind of, roundtable debates are they having? What are the divides within these university and these school institutions? And so it's not just the universities either. It also goes to the grade schools as well, what we've been seeing. There's been a lot of heated debates over whether to wear masks. There's been a whole lot of things that have come out. Now we also have a lot of racial tensions and a lot of divides on different ends of the spectrum. And so I don't think this is going to end anytime soon. I think it's part of the reckoning of putting a lot of these issues to the forefront that haven't been put forth before. They've just been ignored, or people have just basically pretended as if it's not happening, like they don't have this disgruntledness or these questions that are rolling around in their head, bringing out the truths. the ugly truths that were always there. And so just get ready. There's going to be a lot of these type of issues that you're going to see in the coming months, maybe years even to come, where we're going to see a lot of things uncovered. Because, for one, I mean, I think a lot of this was brought about since George Floyd's death. And also, not only just that, the pandemic, it brought a lot of people to acknowledge that things aren't always going well. We're hiding a lot of how we feel and a lot of the things that aren't working out. And we're just letting these things slide under the radar. And people are tired of it. And so, you can't just keep things bottled up for too long, because whatever you're trying to hide, eventually it will come out. It will come out.